The keys rattled against the lock as he struggled to put the correct one into the keyhole. His hands were clammy and they kept shaking. When he finally pushed the key in and turned it, relief flooded him. He pushes open the front door and is met with pitch blackness. There is a lamp to his left by the couch. He turns it on to illuminate his living room. A gentle glow of light creates a small sphere, enough to allow him to look around. He is searching for the familiar golden fluff of his dog, but doesn't find her. "Desdemona, come here, girl," he shouts. There isn't a responding bark, but after a moment he hears padded paws coming down the stairs. He must have forgotten to close his bedroom door, which meant the dog took the opportunity to sleep in his bed. The man can't say he feels bad about it because as he checks his watch, it reads 11 p.m., the latest he's ever been away from home. Des comes bounding toward him, all happy steps, as she nuzzles into the side of his leg. He pets her gently. "Come on, let's go outside," he tells her. The dog's ears perk up at the word outside, and she is already gone to stand at the back door. It's with great effort that he sluggishly moves to let her out. As soon as the back door is opened, Des runs out like a madman. She runs in circles for a good while before settling on a spot to do her business. As she does this, the man leans his weight against the doorframe. The action offers only so much relief before he feels himself sliding toward the floor. He manages to right himself before he can collapse. It did him no good to wait for Des, so the man set about preparing her dinner. There is wet food and dry kibble in one of the lower cabinets, and he treats her to the former as an act of penance. He's never left Des alone in the townhouse for long. That's why he chose the job he has. It has him clocking in at 9, lets him come home for an hour and a half lunch, and he's clocked out by 6:30 p.m., arriving home at 7. For how long Des is taken outside, he regrets making her wait for him. He felt bad, so when the golden furred dog walked into the kitchen, he promised her to spend the entire day tomorrow outside, to which the dog just wagged its tail, not understanding a word. He closed the back door and left Des alone to eat. His legs felt wobbly, so he wanted to retire for the night, but when he stood at the stairs, he found himself unwilling to climb them. "The couch it is, then," the man said. When the back of his knees touched the couch, all his strength left him, and he came crashing down. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Des's chewing. Doing nothing makes him acutely aware of the burning itch in his left hand. He lifts it, his eyes tracing their white bandage wrapped around it. The subway train is how he gets to work. It's a 30-minute commute that is always uneventful, even with the various types of people on board. Typically, he'll keep his head low, watch something on his phone, and have his earphones in with the volume high. Since he's never felt unsafe while taking the subway, he never saw a reason to pay attention to his surroundings. That was a mistake on his commute home. A stranger had been taking up multiple seats because he was lying down, curled up on his side. People kept their distance from the man, feeling something off with him, yet the stranger hadn't moved the entire train ride. Not until the doors opened. That's when the man lunged across the train, latching his teeth into exposed flesh. The stranger's bite felt like he was trying to tear away meat. If it weren't for the 2 policemen patrolling the platform, Desdemona's master would have been one hand short. After the whole ordeal, he was taken to the hospital by one of the officers and kept there to file charges against his assailant. The attending doctor told him he needed stitches, and they gave him something in case of infection. He hoped he didn't contract some kind of disease from the stranger because ever since leaving the hospital, he had been feeling so faint. He let his hand flop to his side and sink further into the couch. His face felt sweaty, his body uncomfortable, and his eyesight was hazy. The man needed to sleep, so he closed his eyes. He felt a set of paws rest on his thighs no more than 8 minutes later. Des had finished her meal and was seeking attention from her master. "No, Des," he commanded. The dog got off of him, but that didn't last long. She kept bumping into his legs, being adamant that he pay attention to her. Soon it became too much for the sickly man. "Des, move," he directed her. Des backed away as her master stood up. The movement caused him to pitch forward violently, but he gritted his teeth and straightened himself as best he could. He walked to the kitchen with the dog following closely behind. "Get in," he said, opening the door to her cage. The cage is rather large, meant for a Malamute-sized dog, and he did this purposefully as he wanted Desdemona to be comfortable whenever he needed to use it. The dog obediently went into the cage and settled on the bed inside. He felt guilty, but he seriously needed rest. Before coming home, he had messaged his boss that he'd be using sick leave for a few days. He's sure he'll feel a little better in the morning and will be able to keep his promise to Des. Now that Des was put up, he lay on the couch, stretching his limbs before relaxing. He blinked for a moment before allowing his eyes to close again. The man's breathing evened out as sleep overtook him. It wasn't until an hour later that his breathing took on a ragged edge. He began to moan as his overheated body fought against itself. If someone were to touch him, they would think that the man was on fire. Sweat was drenching his clothing, and the fabric of the couch wasn't spared. The man tossed and turned, writhing in pain, before an eerie stillness came over him. Desdemona awoke when she felt her master's distress. Her cage is tucked into the corner of the kitchen, and she can't see her master because the side of the cage is pushed up against the wall, blocking her view. All she can do is listen and let out a small whimper. After a moment, when her master let out his last breath, everything became quiet within the townhouse. She let out a bark because her instincts told her something was wrong. Des barked loudly, attempting to rile her master, knowing that he was the only one who could calm her nerves. No response came, so the dog began to bark in earnest. She only quieted down when shuffling could be heard from the other side of the wall. Coming around the corner is her master, but Des backs herself into the furthest part of her cage. Her hackles rise as she looks at the thing that wears the face of her master. The creature makes no noise except for the rustling of its clothes and its shoes that squeak against the linoleum of the kitchen floor. She sniffs in the creature's direction and is assaulted by the stench of death. Whatever the creature is, it's not alive, as far as her nose can tell, yet it shambles towards her. The thing collapses heavily onto the cage and it begins to slot its fingers in between the bars. Never has Des felt like prey before, but this creature wants her. If it has the opportunity to, then it will eat her. She can feel the hunger radiating from it, so she barks at it in warning. Conflict blooms within her because her master's face stares at her as she barks. Her barks are to let the creature know she'll bite if she needs to. She has never bitten her master before, but this isn't her master. That's what her instincts say. The creature isn't perturbed by the hostility Des radiates. It's unfazed, which causes the dog to waver. Fingers are still grasping in her direction, but Des recognizes they can't reach her. Since she can't scare the creature away, Des lies down. There's nothing either can do, so that leaves her with one option: sleep. The dog rests, curled up in the corner. As she slumbers, the creature continues its pointless mission. Hours pass by for Des. The dog can't tell time, but she can feel her body needing to relieve itself. It goes against a dog's instinct to defecate where they eat or sleep. She needs to go outside or somewhere in the townhouse that's away from the kitchen. Des moves to the front of the cage and tries to dig at the bottom flooring. Her actions cause the creature to move to her, and she barks once before hastily retreating, narrowly avoiding the grabbing fingers. Des whines loudly, and when more time passes, the dog gives in to her bodily functions. Des is miserable as she lies in the corner. More days have passed since her master had locked her in the cage, and by this point, her fur has become dirtied from her waist. What makes it worse is that hunger pains have begun to set in. Already her once full figure has shrunken down. Her ribs can be seen from the way her skin clings to her bones, and her paws are bloodied from how many attempts she's made to dig out. The creature must be as starved as her, but it hasn't gone off in search of easier prey. It still reaches through the small bars, gray skin rubbed raw against the metal. Des has been watching one finger that has been so scraped by the cage that it's hanging on by the veins that connect to it. With one wrong twist by the creature, the pinky finger detaches itself, falling before Des. The dog doesn't hesitate. She licks up the piece of meat, swallowing it in one gulp. The meat is rotting, but the dog doesn't care. She wants more. Des grows confident as she gets closer to the bars of the cage. With movement quick and precise, Des latches her teeth onto a pointer finger, wrenching the appendage off. She chews it once before swallowing. Des goes for another, and another, until the creature is fingerless, but this won't stop it from pushing its nubby hands against the cage. Without the danger of being grasped, Des can safely nibble away at the offered flesh. Rancid liquid pours from the creature's open wounds, and Des laps it up, quenching her thirst. She looks into the creature's eyes as she does this. Her master doesn't blink. Des's newfound meal is interrupted when she hears fiddling noises coming from outside the front door. She pauses, tilting her head to the side as she listens. There is an audible click as the lock is turned. The front door opens, allowing the outside light to flutter through. Two figures, a man and a woman, walk quietly into the townhouse. Both startle when Desdemona lets out a quick, sharp bark. The man has a machete in his hands and raises it in defense. "We should leave," the woman says, not as quietly as she intended, earning her a sharp glare from the man. Fortunately for them, the creature hadn't hurt the woman because Des had begun to bark wildly. Her master smells of death, and her instincts tell her the creature isn't her master, but her sense of duty has her barking a warning. Intruders are in their home, so Des barks. The man steps further into the townhouse. The barking is coming from the kitchen, but they have yet to see a dog appear. He assumes the dog must be trapped if all it can do is bark. With quiet, slow steps, the man walks in a wide arc in the living room so he can slowly see behind the wall that the barking is coming from. Eventually, Des comes into view, and he is unable to stop the noise of disgust that escapes him. He had caught a whiff of something awful inside the townhouse, but seeing the cause of the smell made him wince. The dog's cage is filled with filth. Once golden fur is now so dirtied with feces and, oh, this dog must have been trapped for a long time. It's not hard for the man to understand what the dog has been living off of. The undead's mangled hands and the bloody mess around the dog's muzzle were indication enough. "Oh my!" The woman began to speak, but covered her mouth with her hand. It was too late, though, because the undead heard her. It rose and reached out with torn hands. The man is fluid in how he gets around the creature, kicking the back of its knee to drop it, and then swinging his machete into the base of its skull. With a couple of whacks, the corpse falls to the ground unmoving. As this is going on, Desdemona becomes frantic within her cage. She had just watched the intruders attack her master, and she was livid. Desdemona scares the couple as she rams into the front of the cage. "We should let it out," the woman says as she stared wide-eyed at the dog. "Don't be stupid. That thing is rabid at this point. I mean, it was eating the dead guy, but is looking at me like I did something wrong," the man replied. "If we let it out, it'll either attack us and eat us because now it knows what people taste like, or it'll attack us because it saw me kill its master." The woman contemplated his words before looking behind at the front door and then the back door. "We need to leave the front and back doors open. We'll only unlock the cage before running to the back. I think it can let itself out if we unlock it. We'll be safe in the back, and once it's free, it should go out the front." The woman spoke her plans out loud. He mulled it over and gave an annoyed look. "Fine," is all he responded with. When both doors are opened, the woman stands with one foot outside the back as she watches him approach the cage. Des has since stopped charging against the cage and has resorted to growling within. The man keeps calm as he slowly approaches the cage. "If you attack, I will kill you," he says before pulling back the latch. He runs away immediately after, pushing the woman outside and closing the back door behind them. Desdemona is flummoxed, but she understands what the man did. She meekly pushes her snout against the cage door, taking a step back when it moves. She builds up her confidence before pushing the door with her head. When it opens, she escapes happily. She turns her attention to the open front door, but pauses. The dog slowly walks up to the creature and nuzzles her nose into its side, inhaling the scent of decay. Her master is gone, and now so too is the creature. She doesn't think anything of it. What drives her now are her instincts that say, without her master, she must leave. The townhouse is no longer a territory she wishes to keep, so the dog runs out the door.